I have been persistently shocked over the last few years as an economist by the shocking waste of human talent, human capital, and I would say a growing waste, a growing number of people who are forced into jobs that don't work with their skills and their abilities and their desires, but that they are forced into doing simply in order to earn a living. This seems to me to impoverish not only them, but us as a society. Looking ahead, though, how I actually got into writing about basic income in the first place was back about 3 years ago when I wrote a piece on my own blog called The Changing Nature of Work, when I started looking at the way in which work in our society is changing, and particularly looking at the what we might call the technological revolution, the third industrial revolution, and the way in which that's changing patterns of working, the move towards a service economy, the automation of production, whereby we can make stuff for almost nothing with very little human intervention. So all the people who in the past lived their lives producing stuff on production lines, or before that produced stuff in the mills or out in the fields, they're not going to produce stuff anymore because actually we can automate it extensively. And I found myself thinking, if work is changing so much, if we're going to change towards a society in which we don't spend our lives making stuff, we don't produce in order to eat anymore, production is something that is done by machines, then what is it that people will do, and how does that relate to work as we know it? And I found myself thinking, actually, if we can produce the means to survive for nearly nothing, then people can do whatever they like. But what we need to do is to make sure that the proceeds from the production of all those machines is equitably distributed so that all people have the means to live. And there are good capitalist reasons for doing that kind of distribution, and that is that if all your robots are owned by Mark Zuckerberg, and he gets all the proceeds, then who is going to buy the production of all these robots? Where are they going to get the money? So there were good reasons for making sure that even in a capitalist society, resources, the proceeds of production were far more equitably distributed so that people had the means to live. And I found myself writing, to my complete astonishment, this would be achieved by having a basic income. And I looked at that and thought, what have I just written? I went on from that to look at this in more detail. I found myself I wrote a chapter in Nestor's book on Robot Society, Vision, Our Work Here is Done, Visions of a Robot Future. I wrote the section on labour markets and the disruption to traditional ways of thinking about labour, and the interaction between employers looking for workers and workers looking for work for employers, and the way in which that is disrupted. And I remember writing a piece about the wastefulness of automation and the way in which, unless we're very careful, automating production and even automating services as well, which is another growing trend, could actually leave us with an awful lot of people on the scrap heap. And actually, as I said, that impoverishes us collectively. I then, because in my other life, I'm a financial writer as well, I found myself writing about, following on the financial crisis, about the need for safe assets in financial markets. This is a bit of an esoteric subject, so bear with me. And the fact that if you want investors to take risk, they have to have safety available too. So government debt, for example, forms like an anchor in financial markets, so investors in their portfolios can have like an anchor of safe assets, and then they're willing to take risks. And that's kind of how entrepreneurialism works, right? And I thought, well, actually, isn't the same true of people in their lives? that people who have some kind of anchor, some kind of security, some kind of constancy, are then able to do things, to take risks, to not have a job. That otherwise they would not be able to do, because they'd be constantly worried about where's the next meal going to come from. And I actually speak from experience on that. I have known what it's like not to know where the next meal is coming from. I have known what it's like to put creative things that I really want to do way down the priority list and give higher priority to things that I don't really want to do and don't make the best of me simply because I've got to earn a living. And I don't want other people to be in that position. And I think that if we could create a society in which everybody has the means to live guaranteed to them, then we will actually create a more entrepreneurial, a more exciting, a more vibrant, a more creative society, and ultimately one which is, in human terms, far more productive. So that's where I stand. That's how I ended up where I am now, is looking at this from all sorts of different angles, and all the roads led in the same direction to the same place. And when you're led in the same direction, regardless of your starting point, I suppose you end up believing that where you end up is where you need to be.